Okay, welcome back to another episode of Third and 23. I'm your host, Alex, and as always, here to talk college football. Um, Here to kind of make my predictions, and as you can see here in the top right corner, this is how I've done so far on the season versus the spread overall. Uh, what I like to call my lock of the weeks, and so forth, right? And before I get into it, as I always say, this is strictly for entertainment purposes. I'm not condoning gambling in any way, shape, or form. And if you are going to gamble, gamble responsibly. And if you're going to take my picks, uh, understand that win or lose, I'm in no way responsible for what picks you select. If you, use this information and go out into the world and make your own decisions. With that said, it's another Saturday, it's another money making day, so let's go get it, right? All right. And as I always say, I'm not picking against the spread on all the games. Some of these are just some of the bigger games of the weekend, and I'm going to talk about them, but I'll let you know if it's a game that I would do versus the spread or if it's just a straight up overall kind of pick and so forth, right? And this is a tough week. You see the games on the screen. This is a tough week. I'm going to give you guys an idea how tough this week is. College game day is out there in Colorado for the Colorado State game. And yeah, the Buffaloes are balling and all of that, and they're like the talk of the college football world. I mean, let's be real, they're about to put one on Colorado State. I mean, that's not a good football team. So that's how you can tell what kind of weekend it is. There's no ranked opponent versus ranked opponent this week, I don't believe. But anyway, so let's getting into it. LSU versus Mississippi State. Man, last time we saw LSU, they were a tale of two halves against Florida State in the opener. They had a 3-point lead, 17-14, and it could have been more, but they weren't able to finish drives. And then Florida State made second half adjustments, and they just took advantage of that revamped secondary of the Tigers, right? They had to replace everybody from a year ago. They went to the portal and used a bunch of portal guys to replace, and their depth is basically like freshmen that they've recruited. So the secondary is the weakest part of the LSU roster, right? So you look at that and you say, man, Mississippi State, Will Rogers, man, he's played a lot of football. Will Rogers is this, Will Rogers is that. I'm gonna tell you guys right here, and I might be the only one who says this. I've never been a Will Rogers guy personally. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I just don't think he's a good quarterback either. I think his stats are always misleading because of the system that he plays in. He does a lot of what I call dink, a lot of, dink, 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 a lot of horizontal passing, a lot of short passes that other guys have to get a lot of yak, right? That's the system that he plays in. Maybe if he played in a different system, he'd look better. I don't know. But in that system, that's what he does. And when I've seen him have to go downfield, he's nowhere near as accurate as his completion percentage will lead you to believe. So that's my opinion on Will Rogers. Maybe you guys think something different, but I don't think Will Rogers and the Mississippi State receivers, are good enough to take advantage of that LSU secondary. That LSU secondary is weak, but I don't think that, these guys, sure, they're going to move the ball some, but I don't think these guys are about to do what Florida State did in the second half of that football game. LSU is also getting back John Emery at running back. I think running back is a weak point of LSU, and John Emery is probably the most talented running back on that team. If you guys remember, John Emery was a 5-star many years ago. He was like a big deal in the state of Louisiana, and then he can't stop getting into issues off the field. It seems like a lot of it surrounds academics, but whatever the case may be, he pretty much, stunted his own career by not doing what he's supposed to do off the field to be able to perform on the field. So because of that, he's missed a lot of time. He's supposed to be back this Saturday. Brian Kelly, the coach for LSU, has already said that, John Emery will be back, and he's been practicing with the team, so he should be in condition to play. And he could be a difference in this game. I think Jaden Daniels can be a difference in this game, too, with his legs. I think he can make a lot of off-script kind of plays in this game. I saw Jaden Delore for Arizona. He did it last Saturday for Arizona, and Arizona went to Starkville and should have pulled off the upset. Delore threw 3 picks in the first half, just really playing poorly. And then in the second half, these guys were fighting all the way back, sent it to the overtime, and then they lost in OT off of a spot. If you guys saw it, he was like 4th and 10. Jaden Lewis scrambling in overtime, and he is correctly called, but he gets tackled maybe a half yard, even less than that, maybe a football length away from getting the first down to keep that drive going in overtime. So Arizona was right there, and I don't think Arizona's as good as LSU. I think the Mississippi State defense is going to have trouble with the LSU wide receivers. And like I said, I think Jaden Daniels is going to make a lot of plays. For that, I'm definitely taking LSU in this game, straight up. The issue I have is the spread. The spread is 9.5, man. 9.5. You're gonna lay 9.5 on the road, man. That's tough. I don't know if I can do that on this game. This is a game, so I'm officially saying I'm staying away from the spread in this game. 9.5 is too tough, but I think LSU is more likely to beat the spread than not. But I'm not confident enough to where I say, oh, I'm taking LSU with and laying the 9.5. So nah, I'm gonna take LSU just straight up in this one. So I'm gonna say so yeah, again, LSU straight up. On to Kansas State, Missouri. This game is kind of it's a border game. The state of Kansas, right? It's right next to the state of Missouri. Kansas State this year hasn't really played anybody. They haven't been tested. Will Howard has been looking, efficient at quarterback. I think Will Howard is a good player too, but they haven't really been tested, right? They haven't played against anybody. Pull it up there right now. Yes, Southeast Missouri, and they played Troy, and they blew them both out. But like I said, Will Howard's been efficient passing the ball. They haven't ran the ball so well so far, but maybe they're just trying out things when you're playing against those kind of opponents, right? Defensively, they've just shut these teams down. Again, they haven't played against anybody. Going on the road against them. What I have noticed, though, is this Kansas State secondary, and I believe this going into the season, the Kansas State secondary actually isn't going to be that strong this year. If you got a team that can pass the ball, you're going to be able to move the ball and put up some points. Missouri's got Brady Cook. This is another QB who I personally am not sold on. I wouldn't have, I mean, if you could have found somebody in the portal, I would have did that because I wouldn't have gone into this season with Brady Cook, but that's just me. Missouri's coming off a 23-19 win against Middle Tennessee State. Same Middle Tennessee State that Alabama just annihilated the week before. And Missouri's not supposed to be Alabama, but damn. So 23-19. They weren't really great passing the ball in this game. I don't think Brady Cook's going to be that great passing the ball overall. And Cody Schrader at running back has done some good things in his career, but he's not exactly what you would call explosive. So this game is 3.5, right? And I believe that Kansas State can win this game. And I was kind of up in the air on, man, what I'd lay to 3.5. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with that. I'm going to go ahead and go with Kansas State and laying this 3.5. Because I think, on the road, sure. But I don't think Missouri is good enough offensively to score enough points to where Will Howard can't get these guys over the hump and beat this spread. I think the Kansas State offensive line is more than good enough to open some holes against Missouri, who usually has a good front seven. And Will Howard is good enough, certainly, to be efficient passing the ball. Look at this. Middle Tennessee went 9 for 18 on third down, 2 for 3 on fourth down last week. So they couldn't even get these guys off the field. Kansas State definitely can move the ball. And I don't think Missouri's some big-time home field advantage either. So I'm going to go Kansas State, and I'm going to lay the 3.5 in this one. Okay. Moving on, we're going to go to Penn State and Illinois. Man, Illinois is in just having a disastrous season right now. They lost to Kansas in a game that I think what was the final? Was it 34-23? I believe the final score was. Yeah, it was 34-23. They gave up 550 yards in that game, over 550 in that game. to Kansas. I think Kansas, it was a good scrappy team for sure. I'm not even calling them scrappy. They're good. They got some really good running backs on that team. But 34-23. Honestly, man, the game wasn't even really that close. If you watch the game, it felt like it was a 27 point just beating. So I don't and yeah, in week 1 these guys beat Toledo 30-28. So these guys are struggling. They're struggling they're struggling stopping the run, and Penn State with those running backs, Singleton and Katron Allen, and then Drew Alar, that's how you pronounce his name. He's looking great at QB right now. I mean, sure. I mean, they played Delaware last week, so you can't take anything from that. But against West Virginia in the first week, I mean, he looked good. He looked good, and these running backs can definitely get off. So this is the kind of game where I think Penn State can certainly get off. And sorry if you guys heard my doorbell. Let me be right back. Okay, so sorry about that. Back to what I was saying. So yeah, I think Penn State's going to run the ball, pretty much at will against Illinois, who's having a really rough season. This could be the kind of game where you say, Penn State comes in sleeping because, you know, they're not awake for a noon game, and they're reading their press clippings, and Illinois is bad, and they're a 14-point favorite. I think Penn State is more than 14 points better, but I'm not going to lay 14 points down on the road. Brett Bielema might have something up his sleeve still, but definitely straight up, this is an easy, straight up pick in my book. I'm taking Penn State on the road at Illinois. All right. Virginia Tech, Rutgers. So if you guys haven't been paying attention, man, Rutgers is 2-0. Who they beat? They beat Northwestern, who doesn't have a coach, right? And they beat Temple. But both games, they only gave up 7 points. And I thought coming into this season, the Rutgers defense was going to be pretty solid. I thought they were going to have a solid defense this year. And they've really shown that the strength of their team is definitely running the ball. In fact, both sides of the ball, like stopping the run and running the ball, are the strongest points of this team. You're going against a Virginia Tech team who they still haven't announced who's going to start at quarterback between Grant Wells and Kyron Jones. But regardless who starts, they don't have a running back. So Rutgers, I mean, I will be shocked if Rutgers can't stuff the Virginia Tech running game completely and make them a one-dimensional football team. On the other side, Rutgers offensively, like I said, they can run the ball, but they can't really pass it like that. I mean, Gavin Wimsatt is a QB. He's just looking like, a guy out there, right? The Rutgers passing game is just full of just guys. Virginia Tech is definitely good enough to shut down the Rutgers passing attack. So it's basically going to come down to Rutgers being able to run the ball and how well they can run it versus Virginia Tech, or versus Virginia Tech being able to pass the ball and how well they can pass it against Rutgers. So for me, because Virginia Tech hasn't shown that they're a consistent passing team, and I don't care this is in New Jersey because that stadium probably won't even be half full for Rutgers, but they haven't shown to be a consistent passing team. So even though they're going on the road to a non-hostile environment, I still don't believe they're going to be consistent enough throwing the ball. I think Rutgers is good enough to get this team to get to 3-0, and so that's what I'm expecting to happen here. I'm gonna go ahead and take Rutgers at home. It's 6.5. That was kind of surprising to me. These guys are a 6.5 point favorite against Virginia Tech. I don't know when the last time Rutgers was favored by 6.5 against a Power 5 team. So that one I'm not gonna do. So if you're keeping track right now, the only spread I've laid is I'm taking Kansas State with a 3.5 on the road at Missouri. We'll get to some others though. Don't worry. So next up, South Carolina, Georgia. It's a bit, it's SEC versus SEC. So you usually you're gonna see that up here because premier conference in college football. Even though they have been kind of having some issues this year, I'm not gonna deny that. South Carolina, as I said in the preseason, I thought they were the worst team in the SEC. They have done nothing to make me think differently. Even against Furman, these guys had some issues. But yeah, they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't even run the ball against Furman. They couldn't move the ball well on the ground in their opener against North Carolina. No matter where they finished, they actually finished with -2 yards rushing. Obviously, you take sacks in there. But they can't run the ball. There's no running back there at South Carolina. You got no running back. You got no running game. You're going against Georgia. You're about to make it a one-dimensional attack with Spencer Rattler, who's about as inconsistent as they come at quarterback. And then you're playing a Georgia team that, to be fair, they haven't played anybody, and they've kind of been asleep at the wheel, too, with the start these games, and then they go on and they just blow these teams out. Blew out UT Martin, blew out Ball State. It kind of seemed like they're going through the motions to get to, like, the real teams. They're a 27-point favorite. I'm not going to lay 27. As you guys know, that's not really my style to do stuff like that. But, I mean, this is an obvious pick with Georgia winning this game at demolish South Carolina. All right, now we can move on to Tennessee, Florida. Once the premier game in the SEC about 30 years ago or so, like 25. Now, an interesting game, right? Take a look at Florida. They had a terrible performance week 1 against Utah where the defense played really sound football, played really well. But offensively, you couldn't do anything. You're playing against a Utah team with tons of backups. Just embarrassing. So many penalties to ruin scoring opportunities. Just an undisciplined football team. And you go, last week they played McNeese State. Now, McNeese State is probably going to go down as like a really bad FCS school. But at the very least, you could say they still play sound defensively. And now the penalties went away. So did they start to get a little more discipline as the season, from week to week? You could say that. And I think they are a sound defensive football team. I think and another good thing they did last week is they started to run the ball, which is with their identities and offense. They didn't try to make Graham Mertz into something he's not. I think that's something they're going to do in this game. I think they can play sound defense in this game. And I think they can run the ball and control tempo in this game against Tennessee. I think that's because of that. That's going to keep this as a 4-quarter football game. And I just took a look just now. Just a quick aside. This game opened as Tennessee's a 6.5-point favorite. Man, it's down to 5. So it seems like a lot of action was going to Florida. I would have actually took Florida against the spread pick with that 6.5. I don't think I'm going to do it with the 5 though. Well, I may. To talk about Tennessee real quick though, they have a balanced offense. They balanced running and throwing. They had a sleepy performance last week against Austin Peay, 30-13. But I mean, this is college football, man. These guys were just thinking about Florida. Nobody cared about Austin Peay. But let's just call it what it is, right? These guys got a balanced attack and a good enough to win in the swamp at night attack. I think Tennessee is a year better than Florida. And what I mean when I say that is Florida in 2024 is going to be way better than they are in 2023. But this is a growing pains kind of season for that. And when they go to Knoxville next year, it might be a whole different kind of story. This might be a whole different kind of take that I'm going on. But right now, I can see Tennessee winning straight up. But against the spread, man, I really like Florida at 6.5. I really like Florida at 6.5. I think this can come down to a field goal kick. But I'm going to go ahead and stay away from this game betting. I mean, 5, I don't know. 6.5, I really like Florida at, though. 5, I don't love Florida at 5. So I'm going to take Tennessee straight up. Not going to take the spread in that one. You guys are like, damn, let me get some against the spread picks. They only gave me K-State, Missouri. I told you guys this is a rough week. There's not a lot of great games. But these next two are going to be against the spread, though, so fear not. First up, we got Pittsburgh at West Virginia. If you guys know, this is a backyard brawl, right? It's the backyard brawl. You guys remember this? Not one of the more well-known rivalries out there, but a pretty fierce one when they've played in the past. Pittsburgh is coming off a loss to Cincinnati, 27-21. Pitt's quarterback is Phil Jurkovec. He had a terrible game last week against Cincinnati, and wasn't really shocked to me. Phil Jurkovec, he started at BC, and he was an inaccurate quarterback there who was a big recruit for BC because they don't really get recruits with that kind of rating to come in to BC, but he was pretty inaccurate, I thought, there. He transfers to Pitt, and what do you know? He's still pretty inaccurate throwing the ball. Running the football is their identity, right? But they didn't really run the ball last week, so I think they'll probably try to get back to that. But the thing is, they're going against a team that is very good, in my opinion, at running the football. I like C.J. Donaldson at West Virginia. Garrett Green is a mobile quarterback who can do things with his legs. They just played Duquesne last week, so you're not going to really care about that game. But when they lost to Penn State in the opener, I mean, they were in the game for a half. Penn State's just a much better team than them. They were able to run the ball. I mean, they had some effective runs in that game. So I think West Virginia, they're a 2.5-point favorite. I think they can win. I think they're good enough to win the backyard brawl by at least 3. So I'm taking West Virginia against the spread to cover at home, at night, the backyard brawl against Pitt. And finally, Syracuse-Purdue. Syracuse, led by Garrett Schrader, has they've kind of had a under the radar kind of year. I don't think Syracuse has played anybody of note yet. They played Colgate, 165-0. Who cares about that, right? And they played Western Michigan. They won 48-7. Again, that's not really that. You're not really impressing me with either one of those. I think that you're in for a big step up in competition in this one, and I don't know if Syracuse is ready for that. Purdue's weakness so far this season is more been stopping the pass. They give up plays in the passing game, but Garrett Schrader, to me, he can make some off-script plays, but his strength is running, not really throwing. So I don't think he's going to make Purdue pay as much as you think. And Purdue being at home, haven't been tested now with Fresno State, who's a good mid-major, then Virginia Tech going on the road and winning that game. I think Purdue is good enough at home. They're actually 2.5-point underdog. So at home, I'm going to take Purdue straight up. I'm not even sweating the 2.5. I'm taking Purdue money line right there. And if you guys are talking to me like, oh, well, what was your lock of the week? Man, this week is so tough to pick a lock of the week because we don't have great games like that. But if I was going to go ahead and go with a lock of the week, I would go with that Kansas State in that 3.5. So we're going to call Kansas State my lock of the week. Those are my 3 against the spread picks, though. Kansas State covering the 3.5 against Missouri. West Virginia covering the, 2.5? Yeah, 2.5 against Pitt. And Purdue, which winning straight up against Syracuse. If you guys wanted to do Florida with the 5, and Tennessee, feel free. I really liked it more at 6.5. So if you caught it at 6.5, hey, good luck. But that really wraps up my predictions for this Saturday. Let's hope we all go out there and make some money. And if you like what you see, as always, like, follow, subscribe, all of that. I'll have my YouTube handle up here in a few seconds. Thank you and have a great weekend.